Emily's hands trembled as she approached table 12, the wine bottle feeling impossibly heavy. The man seated with his back to her radiated an aura of cold authority that made the entire restaurant seem smaller. Designer suit, perfectly styled dark hair, shoulders that spoke of absolute power. Then she saw it, a thin white scar across his left hand as he reached for his water glass. Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be, but that scar, the way he held his shoulders, the familiar tilt of his head. Mason Smith, her childhood companion, the lonely boy who disappeared from her life 20 years ago when his father moved them to New York. But this wasn't the gentle child she remembered. This was a man whose very presence made seasoned waiters nervous, whose cold blue eyes could freeze someone mid-sentence. This was the billionaire whose business empire dominated headlines, and he was about to recognize her, or destroy her career trying. As this story of unexpected reunions and destined love unfolds, she hopes you'll join this emotional journey. The goal is to reach 5,000 subscribers, and your support makes all the difference. Please subscribe and let her know in the comments where you're listening from. Emily Martinez had been working at Bella Vista for 8 months, and she'd never seen the entire staff go silent like this. The maitre d' personally escorted 3 intimidating figures to table 12, the premier spot overlooking San Antonio's glittering skyline. "That's Mason Smith," whispered Jessica, her fellow server. "Smith Enterprises, the guy owns half of Texas. Word is, he's considering investing in the restaurant." Emily's blood turned to ice. She'd seen the reservation earlier. M. Smith, party of 3. She'd told herself it was coincidence. Mason was common enough. But seeing him now, there was no denying it. "Emily!" Manager Torres appeared beside her, panic barely controlled. "Table 12 needs immediate service. You speak multiple languages, right? This is crucial. These men could make or break us." She nodded numbly, checking her reflection in a wine glass. Simple black uniform, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Nothing remained of the wild-haired child who'd once raced through mansion corridors. The walk across the dining room felt eternal. Mason sat with his back to her, but his companions, a silver-haired man and sharp-featured woman, watched with calculating eyes. "Good evening, gentlemen," she began professionally, setting the wine list down. "Welcome to Bella Vista. I'm Emily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Mason didn't look up from his phone, fingers moving with sharp efficiency across the screen. "We've been waiting 15 minutes, the silver-haired man said coldly. "This level of service is hardly acceptable." Emily's cheeks burned. "I apologize for any delay, sir. May I start you with beverages?" "Finally," Mason muttered without looking up, his voice carrying crisp authority. "Bring me your wine list, and make sure you know what you're talking about. I don't have patience for amateurs." The casual cruelty hit her like a slap. This wasn't the boy she'd once known. "Of course, sir." She opened the leather-bound menu with steady hands. "Are you looking for something specific? We have an excellent Italian selection. I'll decide what I want." He cut her off, finally looking up. The moment their eyes met, the world stopped. Green eyes staring into blue. For just a heartbeat, she saw confusion flicker across his features, recognition struggling against disbelief. "The wine list," he said shortly, extending his scarred hand. Emily reached for the menu at the same moment he did. Their fingers brushed, sending electricity through her entire body. She jerked back so suddenly that the leather portfolio slipped from both their grasps. Time slowed as the wine list struck his water glass. Crystal met marble with devastating precision, and ice-cold water cascaded across the white tablecloth, soaking his jacket sleeve. "Jesus Christ!" Mason shot to his feet, water dripping from his expensive suit. His face transformed from cold professionalism to thunderous rage. The entire restaurant fell silent. Every eye was on them. "I'm so sorry," Emily stammered, grabbing napkins. "Please, let me—" "Don't touch anything else." She stood there, clutching napkins, watching her world crumble. Mason's fury was like a force of nature. "Where's your manager?" His voice carried across the dining room. "Get your manager. Now!" Emily thought of her mother, still recovering from months of pneumonia. The medical bills, the rent due next week, the carefully balanced budget that depended on keeping this job. "Sir, please," she whispered desperately. "I can fix this." "No." Mason was already turning away, his wet jacket leaving drops on marble. "This is exactly the kind of incompetence I refuse to tolerate." He took one step toward the front of the restaurant, then another. Emily watched him go, about to destroy her livelihood with the same indifference his father had once shown. Without thinking, she called out in perfect Italian, "Mason, per favore, aspetta." "Mason, please wait." He froze mid-step, as if struck by lightning. The Italian words hung in sudden silence like a bridge spanning decades. Mason turned slowly, his entire body rigid with shock. "What did you say?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried across the silent restaurant. Emily's heart hammered. She'd spoken without thinking, muscle memory overriding logic. "I said, please wait," in Italian. His blue eyes searched her face with laser intensity. Perfect Italian. The silver-haired man and woman exchanged glances, sensing the sudden shift. The fury was still there, but underneath was something else. Confusion, disbelief, and the faintest flicker of hope. "You taught me," Emily said quietly, "a long time ago." Mason stared, memory warring with impossibility. His gaze dropped to her name tag. "Emily," he breathed. "Yes, Emily Martinez." His voice was hoarse. "Emily Chen Martinez now. Mom remarried when I was 14. Something cracked in Mason's expression. "My God, Lily's little girl." Manager Torres chose that moment to appear, face flushed with anxiety. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Mason said quickly, eyes never leaving Emily's face. "Just a misunderstanding. We'll need a few minutes." "Of course, sir. Whatever you need." Torres backed away, relieved. Mason returned to his seat, turning to his companions. "Charles, Margaret, would you excuse us? There's something I need to discuss privately." The silver-haired man raised an eyebrow but nodded. "We'll be at the bar." Emily watched them leave, mind reeling. 20 minutes ago, Mason had been just another intimidating customer. "Sit down," Mason said gently. "Please." She perched on the chair's edge, every muscle tense. Up close, she could see years etched around his eyes, careful control over every expression. "How long have you been in San Antonio?" he asked. "About a year. We moved here when circumstances changed." "We?" "Mom and I. It's been difficult." Something flickered across his features. "Is Lily all right?" "She's recovering. Had pneumonia earlier this year, bad pneumonia, but she's getting better." Mason was quiet for a long moment. When he looked at her again, vulnerability replaced the businessman's mask. "I looked for you," he said suddenly, "after we moved to New York. Begged my father to let me call, write letters. He said it was better to make a clean break." Emily's chest tightened. "I waited. For months I thought you'd write or call. I never stopped thinking about you, either of you. You two were the only real family I ever had." The words hit like a physical blow. Family, that's what they'd been. "Your father, how is he?" Mason's expression hardened. "Dead. Heart attack 3 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He died exactly as he lived, alone in his office working on deals that didn't matter." Emily heard the pain underneath his words. "I swore I'd never become him," Mason continued. "And look at me, treating service staff like they're beneath me, acting like the world owes me something. You're not him, aren't I? I was ready to have you fired. My childhood best friend, and I didn't even recognize you." Emily leaned forward. "The Mason I knew was kind and protective. That person is still there." Mason smiled, really smiled for the first time. It transformed his entire face. "I missed you," he whispered. "God, Emily, I missed you so much." "I missed you too." They sat in silence, hands almost touching across the table. "When does your shift end?" Mason asked. "About 3 hours. Then I'll wait. I've been waiting 20 years to see you again. 3 more hours is nothing." Emily moved through the rest of her shift acutely aware of Mason's presence. He conducted quiet business, but his eyes kept finding her across the restaurant. Near closing time, Torres handed her a slip of paper. "Mr. Smith asked me to give you this. An address in elegant handwriting. Meet me here when your shift ends. Please. M." By midnight, Emily sat in her Honda Civic, debating. What did she have in common with Mason Smith anymore? But then she remembered the vulnerability in his eyes, the way he'd said her name like a prayer. She drove to the Dominion, past security gates to a modern mansion with glowing windows. Through the glass, she could see Mason moving inside, and her breath caught. He'd changed into jeans and a white shirt, looking more like the boy she'd known. "You came," he said when he answered the door, relief flooding his voice. "I almost didn't. But you did." He led her inside to a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. "Thank you." The house was beautiful, but sterile. "It's like a museum," Emily said. "It feels that way. I bought it thinking I'd entertain, have dinner parties, but evenings are very quiet." The loneliness in his voice made her heart ache. They settled in the living room, Mason choosing a chair across from the sofa, always maintaining respectful distance. "Tell me about your life," he said. "What have you been doing?" "College, mostly. I'm finishing my psychology degree this spring." "That makes perfect sense. You always understood people's feelings." Emily studied his face. "What about you, besides world domination?" That earned a genuine laugh. "I was engaged once. Sarah. She was exactly what my father would have approved of, perfectly groomed, completely uninterested in anything beyond status." "What happened?" "I realized I was marrying a stranger. We'd been together 2 years, and I didn't even know what made her laugh." His voice grew quiet. "She never bothered to look past the money to see who I actually was." Emily thought of her own failed relationships, how none had ever felt quite right. "And your stepfather?" Mason asked. "You said your mother remarried." Emily's expression darkened. "Tom's a good man, but when Mom got sick, when the medical bills started piling up, he couldn't handle the stress. Moved to California last year." Mason's jaw tightened. "He abandoned you when your mother was sick?" "It's complicated." "No, it's not. You don't abandon family when they need you most." The word hung between them. Family. Mason was quiet, then stood and moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands. "Emily, I need you to know something. When I recognized you tonight, it wasn't just nostalgia. It was recognition, like finding a piece of myself I'd lost 20 years ago." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" "That I'm still in love with you. I think I've been in love with you since we were children, and seeing you again just made me realize I never stopped." The honesty in his voice made her eyes fill with tears, but before she could respond, Mason continued, his voice growing stronger. "Let me tell you what really happened. Why we were separated. Why I never contacted you." Emily nodded, sensing this was important. Mason's eyes grew distant as memory took hold. "I was 5 when my mother died. Cancer. My father. Robert Smith was brilliant at business, terrible at being human. After Mum's funeral, he hired Lily." Emily listened, transfixed. Lily was everything he wasn't. Warm, patient, actually interested in raising a child instead of building an empire. "When you were 7 and I was 10 and your stepfather lost his job, Lily started bringing you to stay overnight when I had nightmares or when Robert traveled for business." The memories came flooding back to Emily. Those magical nights in the mansion, feeling like she had a real family. "Those were the happiest years of my life," Mason continued. "You and Lily were my whole world. Robert tolerated it because Lily kept me out of his way, let him focus on work. But when I turned 12, his voice broke slightly. I overheard him on the phone with his business partner. "The boy is too attached to the help," he said. "It's making him soft, emotional. The New York office needs someone to run it. Perfect opportunity for a fresh start." Emily's heart clenched. "I tried to fight it, told him I wouldn't go, that Lily and you were my family. That's when he sat me down and explained how the world really worked, that caring about people was weakness, that the only thing that mattered was power and success." Mason's voice grew bitter. "He said if I ever tried to contact you, he'd make sure Lily never worked again. That he'd destroy her reputation, make it impossible for her to support you." Tears streamed down Emily's face. "Mason, I was 12 years old and terrified. So I let him take me to New York, let him enroll me in schools that would teach me to be just like him. And for 20 years I believed I'd succeeded." He cupped her face gently. "Until I saw you tonight and remembered who I used to be, who I could be again." Emily leaned into his touch. "I love you too. I never stopped loving you." When their lips met, it was like coming home after 20 years in exile. Every wall Mason had built around his heart crumbled in that moment, leaving only the truth they'd both carried. Some love is strong enough to survive anything. Emily woke in Mason's guest room to the sound of his voice on the phone downstairs. She found him in the kitchen, speaking urgently while coffee brewed. "No, Charles, cancel everything for the next 2 weeks," he was saying with absolute authority. "The Peterson meeting can wait. This is more important." When he saw her, his face transformed into a smile that made her stomach flutter. "Good morning," he said, ending the call and handing her perfect coffee. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." She accepted the mug, noting he remembered exactly how she liked it. I have an idea, Mason said. Something I should have done 20 years ago. What? I want you to meet someone very important to me. He led her to his study, where a framed photograph sat on the desk. Emily gasped. It was Lily, maybe 15 years younger, pushing a swing while 10-year-old Mason grinned with pure joy. I've carried this picture for 20 years, Mason said softly. It's from the only day I remember being completely happy as a child. Emily picked up the frame with trembling hands. She remembered that day, Lily's day off, just the three of them at the park. I want to see her, Mason said suddenly. Your mother. I need to. An hour later, they stood outside Emily's modest apartment. Emily's hands shook as she unlocked the door. Mom, she called, I brought someone to see you. Lily Martinez emerged from the kitchen in her favorite robe, graying hair loose around her shoulders. When she saw Mason, she went completely still. Mason, she whispered, is it really you? Hello, Lily. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. Lily burst into tears, moving toward Mason with arms outstretched. He met her halfway, enveloping her in a hug that spoke of 20 years of separation. My beautiful boy, Lily sobbed. I've missed you so much. I missed you too, more than you'll ever know. They spent the morning sharing stories, reconnecting, but when Lily began to tire, Mason grew serious. Lily, I need to ask about your health. Emily mentioned pneumonia. Just a stubborn case, Lily said dismissively. We're managing fine. But Mason's business mind was processing information. 3 months of hospitalization. Emily tensed, but Mason was already pulling out his phone. I've just spoken with Dr. Sarah Chen at Johns Hopkins, he said, after a brief call. She's one of the country's leading pulmonary specialists, and she's agreed to review your case. Mason, we can't, Emily began. Why not? His eyes blazed with determination. This woman raised me when my father couldn't be bothered. She loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You think I'm going to let her suffer because you're too proud to accept help? His voice broke slightly. I've spent 20 years trying to find meaning in my success. This is why I have it, to protect the people who made me capable of love. Emily looked between Mason and her mother, seeing hope bloom in Lily's eyes. What would this involve? She asked quietly. Transfer to Johns Hopkins. Dr. Chen specializes in complex cases with autoimmune complications. She believes there are treatments that could completely cure the pneumonia and prevent future issues. Both of us go, Lily said suddenly. If I'm doing this, Emily comes with me. Of course, Mason said immediately. I'll handle everything, your job, your school, whatever you need. Emily felt tears gathering. Family takes care of family. Always, Mason said firmly. A week later, they were in Baltimore. Dr. Chen's diagnosis was encouraging. With proper treatment, Lily could make a complete recovery. As they sat in her comfortable hospital room that evening, Lily squeezed both their hands. I still can't believe this is happening, she said. My 2 children, together again. She looked meaningfully between them. The way you look at each other, some things never change. Later, Emily and Mason walked along Baltimore's inner harbor under the stars. Thank you, Emily said, for everything. Emily. Mason stopped walking, turning to face her. I need to say something. Her heart skipped. What? I'm not just in love with the memory of you. I'm in love with who you are now. The woman who works multiple jobs to support her family, who's pursuing her degree while caring for a sick mother. You're extraordinary. I love you too, Emily whispered. The boy you were and the man you've become. When Mason dropped to one knee on the harbor promenade, Emily's world stopped. I know it soon, he said, producing a small velvet box. But Emily, I've lost 20 years with you. I don't want to waste another day. The ring was perfect, elegant, timeless, exactly what she would have chosen. Emily Martinez, Mason said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that some love is strong enough to last forever? Yes, she managed through her tears. Yes, of course, yes. As the ring slid onto her finger, Emily realized that sometimes the most important journeys bring you exactly where you've always belonged. 2 years later, Emily woke in their shared bedroom to laughter from the kitchen. She smiled, stretching in the bed that had become theirs, marveling at how naturally their lives had woven together. Downstairs, she found Mason making pancakes while Lily sat at the island, telling stories about her volunteer work with hospitalized children. Her mother looked radiant, completely recovered, eyes bright with health and purpose. Good morning, Emily said, accepting perfect coffee from Mason. We were just discussing timing, Lily said with a meaningful look. For what? Emily asked, though she suspected she knew. Grandchildren, Lily said bluntly. I'm not getting any younger, and I want to spoil some babies properly. Emily and Mason exchanged a look, the wordless communication they'd developed over 2 years of shared mornings and quiet evenings. Actually, Emily said carefully, we've been talking about that. Lily's eyes widened. And? 3 children, Mason said quietly, moving to stand behind Emily, arms circling her waist. 2 years apart, so they can grow up together the way we should have. Here, Emily added, gesturing around the kitchen. With their grandmother's stories and their father's terrible jokes, and all the love we never got to share as children. Lily's eyes filled with happy tears. When? Emily turned in Mason's arms. Soon, after our 2nd anniversary. 6 months from now, Mason confirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. As they ate breakfast together, Emily marveled at the perfect ordinariness of it all. Mason had scaled back his business commitments to focus on sustainable projects and time at home. Emily's psychology practice was thriving, specializing in family therapy and childhood trauma. What's on the agenda today? Lily asked. Site visit to the affordable housing project, Mason replied. Emily's consulting on the community center design. And dinner tonight with the Garcias, Emily added. Rodriguez is celebrating his daughter's graduation. These mentions of shared friends and integrated lives reminded Emily how completely they'd rebuilt not just their romance, but their partnership. Later, driving to Mason's construction site, Emily watched him handle business calls with competent efficiency while never making her feel excluded. Penny for your thoughts, Mason said as they parked, just thinking about how different everything is from 2 years ago. Better different? Definitely better. Though I do miss the excitement of spilling wine on billionaires. I could arrange a reenactment if you're feeling nostalgic, Emily laughed. I prefer this version, where you recognize me and smile instead of glaring. Mason lifted their joined hands, kissing her wedding ring. That scared, lonely little boy who lost his best friend? He's completely healed now. Because of you, because of Lily, because of this life we've built. You know what I realized, Emily said. What? All those years apart weren't wasted. We needed to become who we are now to appreciate what we have. The children we were couldn't have built this, but the adults we became can build anything together. Mason's smile was radiant. Anything? Anything. A business empire, a family, a legacy of love that lasts generations. As they walked hand in hand toward the construction site where Mason built homes for families who needed them, Emily reflected on their journey. From privileged child and caregiver's daughter to successful adults who'd chosen each other not from convenience, but from genuine love and shared values. Their future children would grow up with security both had lacked, not just material comfort, but parents who genuinely loved and respected each other. They would learn what Emily and Mason had discovered, that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in relationships that endure. That true success isn't accumulating power, but using whatever you have in service of love. And on quiet Sunday mornings, when their children asked how Mommy and Daddy met, they would tell the story of 2 lonely children who found family in each other, lost each other to circumstances beyond their control, and found their way back through spilled water and words spoken in Italian. The perfect love story, not because it was easy, but because it was real. 1 year later, the gender reveal party was held in their garden on a perfect spring afternoon. Lily had insisted on organizing everything, claiming it was her right as the future grandmother. Pink and blue balloons hung from the oak trees, and friends from Mason's construction company mingled with Emily's colleagues from her psychology practice. Emily stood beside Mason, her hand resting on her 6-month bump, watching their chosen family celebrate around them. Rodriguez from the construction site was teaching his daughter Italian phrases. Doctor. Chen had flown in from Baltimore specifically for this moment. Even Torres from the restaurant was there, still amazed by the love story that had unfolded at table 12. Ready? Lily asked, holding the sealed envelope from their doctor. Emily and Mason nodded, hands clasped tightly. You're having... Lily paused for dramatic effect, then broke into a radiant smile. A daughter! The crowd erupted in cheers as pink confetti cannons filled the air. Emily felt tears streaming down her face as Mason lifted her off her feet, spinning her around with pure joy. A daughter, he whispered in amazement. "Our little girl." "Sophia," Emily said softly, the name they'd chosen months ago. "Sophia Chen Smith." "After Dr. Chen?" Mason asked, surprised. "After the woman who saved my mother's life and made this moment possible." As the party continued around them, Emily and Mason sat quietly together on the garden swing he'd installed, watching their family celebrate. Lily was already planning the nursery with typical enthusiasm, while their friends shared stories and laughter that echoed through the trees. "Can I tell you something?" Mason said, his hand covering Emily's on her belly. "Always. That scared little boy who lost his family 20 years ago. Every morning he wakes up amazed that this is real, that he gets to love you and be loved back, that he gets to watch our daughter grow up with everything we never had." Emily leaned against his shoulder. "What we never had was each other, but she'll have both of us, always." "Always," Mason agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. As the sun set over their garden party, Emily closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of their life. Lily's laughter, friends' conversations, the distant sound of children playing. In a few months, their own daughter's voice would join this symphony of family and love. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the simplest moments. A spilled glass of water, a few words spoken in a half-remembered language, and the courage to believe that some connections are strong enough to survive anything, even 20 years of separation. Their love story was finally complete. This story of childhood love, reunited across decades, has reached its perfect conclusion. If it touched your heart and reminded you that true love always finds a way home, please leave a like and share it with someone who believes in second chances and destiny. New stories of hope, healing, and happily ever after arrive regularly. Until the next heartwarming tale.